the unexpected protector Marcus. Chen never imagined his engineering background would land him in the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Standing before the towering gates of the Velathoran royal palace on Nexus Prime, he adjusted his simple blue diplomatic uniform and tried to calm his racing heart. The massive crystalline structure before him seemed to pulse with an inner light, its walls shifting colors like liquid mercury under the alien sun. Admiral Torres, the stern-faced leader of the human delegation, placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Remember, Chen, these beings have been around for over 10,000 years. They consider us nothing more than upstart children who got lucky with faster-than-light travel. Don't take their arrogance personally." Marcus nodded, though he still wondered why he had been chosen for this mission. 3 weeks ago, he had been quietly working on shield generators aboard the exploration vessel Horizon. Then came the discovery of his unusual mental resistance to psychic influence, a rare trait that made him one of the few humans who could interact with the Velatharans without being overwhelmed by their telepathic abilities. The palace doors opened with a sound like singing crystal, and they were escorted inside by tall, graceful beings whose skin seemed to shimmer with starlight. The Velatharans moved with an otherworldly elegance, their large, luminous eyes holding an intelligence that seemed to peer directly into one's soul. Their guide, a being who introduced himself as High Counselor Vex, spoke in perfectly accented English, though Marcus could sense the disdain beneath the polite words. "The Queen will see you in the throne chamber," Vex announced, his voice carrying strange harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "You will observe proper protocol. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make sudden movements. And above all, do not attempt to shield your thoughts. Her Majesty finds such behavior ... offensive." The throne chamber was vast beyond imagination, its ceiling disappearing into swirling mists that contained what looked like captured galaxies. Floating platforms of crystal served as seating for the Velatharan court, each one occupied by beings whose presence radiated power and ancient wisdom. At the chamber's center sat Queen Lasara on a throne carved from a single massive sapphire. She was breathtakingly beautiful and terrifyingly powerful. Her skin held the deep blue silver of deep space, and her eyes were like twin nebulae, constantly shifting between colors that had no names in human language. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, carrying undertones that resonated in Marcus's bones. "So," Queen Lasara said, her gaze fixing on the human delegation, "the young species comes to bargain for territory in the outer systems. How amusing. Tell me, little mammals, what makes you think you deserve to share the same space as your betters?" Admiral Torres stepped forward with practiced diplomatic grace. "Your Majesty, humanity comes seeking mutual cooperation and understanding. We believe both our species can benefit from silence." The word hit like a thunderclap, sending ripples of psychic energy through the chamber that made several humans stagger. "I did not grant you permission to speak, creature. Your thoughts are loud and crude, your emotions primitive and uncontrolled." Marcus felt anger flash through him at the casual dismissal, but he forced himself to remain calm. This was exactly what they had been warned about. The Velatharans viewed most species as intellectually and spiritually inferior, barely worthy of acknowledgement. Their psychic abilities had elevated them beyond what they considered base emotions and physical limitations. The Queen's attention turned to Marcus, and he felt the full weight of her mental presence pressing against his consciousness. It was like standing in the path of a hurricane made of pure thought, but his unusual resistance held firm. "And you, engineer, she said, her voice carrying notes of surprise. Your mind is ... different, quieter, less offensive than your companions. Before Marcus could respond, something unexpected happened. A commotion erupted from one of the side chambers, and suddenly a small figure came racing across the vast throne room. It was clearly a young leviathan, no taller than Marcus's waist, but its usual graceful control was completely absent. The child's form flickered and wavered, as if he couldn't maintain his physical coherence. The young being was obviously distressed, his silvery skin pulsing erratically with different colors, his large eyes wide with what could only be described as terror. Strange energy crackled around him in uncontrolled bursts, and Marcus could hear several court members hiss in alarm as furniture began to float and twist under the influence of the child's chaotic psychic emanations. Without thinking, without considering the political ramifications or the shocked gasps echoing through the chamber, Marcus stepped forward as the child stumbled. The young leviathan, driven by pure instinct, ran directly to the human and pressed himself against Marcus's legs, hiding behind him like any frightened child seeking protection from something that scared him. The throne room fell into absolute silence. The floating platforms stopped their gentle drift. Even the captured galaxies in the ceiling seemed to pause in their eternal dance. Every eye in the vast chamber focused on the unprecedented sight of a leviathan royal child seeking comfort from a human. Marcus looked down at the small being clinging to him. The child couldn't have been more than the equivalent of 7 or 8 human years, his form slowly stabilizing at the contact with Marcus's solid presence. Instinctively, protectively, Marcus placed his hand on what he assumed was the child's head, feeling the strange texture of skin that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice carrying clearly in the absolute quiet. "You're safe. Whatever scared you, it can't hurt you now." The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Queen Lysara had gone completely rigid, her normally shifting form locked in its most solid state. Around the throne room, courtiers and guards flickered with what Marcus recognized as extreme agitation. Several of the floating sentinel guards began to converge on his position, their forms crackling with dangerous energy. "Stop," Queen Lysara commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls sing in response. The sentinels halted immediately, but their attention remained fixed on Marcus and the child. "Do not move another step closer." Admiral Torres was staring at Marcus with a mixture of admiration and absolute terror. In all their briefings about leviathan culture and protocol, nothing had prepared them for this scenario. A member of the royal family seeking protection from a human was probably unprecedented in their entire 10,000-year history. "High Counselor," Vex moved closer, his luminous eyes wide with what might have been shock. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "this is most irregular. The prince should not be." "The prince, Queen," Lysara interrupted, rising from her throne with fluid grace, "is my concern." As she descended toward them, her form solidified further until she appeared almost human in shape, though one made of living starlight and cosmic energy. "And this human has done something I did not expect." She approached them slowly, and Marcus could feel the child trembling against his legs. The young prince's grip on his uniform tightened, and Marcus found himself shifting slightly to better shield the boy from whatever had frightened him. "My son," Queen Lysara said, her voice gentling in a way that seemed to surprise even her, "has been having difficulties controlling his abilities. His psychic matrix is unstable, his emotional regulation poor. Our healers suggested it was merely a phase of development that he would outgrow in time. The Queen knelt beside her child. Her expression, as much as could be read in features made of living energy, showing what appeared to be genuine concern. But Kale has been experiencing something we have not felt for millennia. Something our evolution was supposed to have left behind. Fear, Marcus said quietly, understanding flooding through him. He's been afraid. Indeed. Queen Lysara reached out tentatively, and Prince Kale finally lifted his head from behind Marcus, though he kept one small hand pressed firmly against the human's uniform. We evolved beyond such base emotions long ago, or so we believed. Fear, anger, joy, love, we considered them. Primitive responses that held us back from true enlightenment. The implications hung in the air like a challenge to everything the leviathans believed about themselves and their superiority over other species. Marcus could see the confusion and uncertainty flickering across the faces of the court members, their usual serene confidence shaken by this revelation. But when Kale's powers began manifesting uncontrollably, the Queen continued. When he started experiencing these emotional responses, we did not know how to help him. We had forgotten how to comfort a frightened child. Marcus looked down at Prince Kale, who was now glowing with a steady, light, peaceful light instead of the chaotic energy bursts from before. You didn't hesitate, Queen Lysara observed, her voice filled with something that might have been wonder. When you saw a child in distress, you offered protection and comfort without question, even though he could have unmade you with an uncontrolled thought, even though helping him might have destroyed your entire mission. Admiral Torres found her voice at last. That's what humans do, Your Majesty. We protect those who need protection, regardless of who or what they are. The Queen was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus and her son, who was now communicating with soft, musical sounds that seemed to indicate he was feeling much calmer. Around them, the court watched in fascination and uncertainty as their fundamental beliefs about emotional evolution were challenged by the simple act of human compassion. Perhaps, Queen Lysara said slowly, her words carrying the weight of centuries of certainty being quietly overturned, we have been wrong about your species. Perhaps there are things we can learn from those who have not forgotten what it means to feel, as if summoned by her words. Alarms began sounding throughout the palace, not the gentle chimes of ceremony, but harsh, urgent warnings that sent the court into immediate action. High Counselor Vex's form flared with alarmed energy as he received some kind of telepathic communication. Your Majesty, he announced, his usual composure cracking. Long-range sensors have detected a hostile fleet entering the system. The Drakta Confederation approaches with a war armada. They're demanding our immediate surrender and the handover of all human delegates. The peaceful moment shattered like crystal. Queen Lysara rose to her full height, power radiating from her in waves that made the air itself shimmer. How long until they reach our defensive perimeter? Less than 1 standard hour, Your Majesty. Marcus felt Prince Kale pressed closer against him as the child sensed the sudden tension and fear filling the chamber. The boy's form began to flicker again, responding to the emotional turmoil around him. It seems, Queen Lysara said grimly, that our philosophical discussions must wait. We face a more immediate crisis, and I fear that both our peoples may need to stand together if any of us are to survive what comes next. The bridge between worlds. The war council that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. humans and leviathans working side by side, their ancient prejudices temporarily set aside in the face of extinction. The Dracta Confederation was notorious throughout the galaxy as a collective of aggressive species that had been expanding their territory through conquest and slavery. For over 2 centuries, Marcus found himself in the bizarre position of sitting at a strategy table made of living crystal, while Prince Kael remained close beside him, the young leviathan's presence helping to stabilize his increasingly erratic powers. Queen Lysara had insisted that Marcus attend the briefing, claiming that her son's emotional state was crucial to their defense plans. The Dracta fleet consists of over 300 vessels, reported Admiral Torres, her voice grim as she studied the holographic display floating above the table. Our combined human and leviathan forces number less than half that amount. They're demanding immediate surrender and the handover of all human representatives for crimes against galactic order. High Counselor Vex's form rippled with barely contained anger. They dare threaten the Velatharan Empire. Our psychic warriors could tear their primitive minds apart before they reached orbit, not without massive casualties. Queen Lysara replied, her voice heavy with the weight of leadership. And they know this. The Dracta have been planning this assault for months, possibly years. They've brought side ampers and mental shields specifically designed to counter our abilities. Marcus studied the tactical display, his engineering mind automatically analyzing the problem. What about your son's abilities? He asked quietly. You mentioned his powers are unusually strong but unstable. Could they be used defensively? The question sent a ripple of shock through the Velatharan council members. Prince Kael looked up at Marcus with those large, luminous eyes, and the human could sense both fear and curiosity in the child's expression. Absolutely not, Queen Lysara said immediately. Kael's powers are far too dangerous. When he loses control, the psychic feedback could kill everyone within a dozen kilometers. That's why he's been so frightened. He can sense the destruction he might cause. But what if he didn't lose control? Marcus pressed gently. What if someone was there to help him focus, to keep him calm and centered? The Queen stared at him as if he had suggested juggling antimatter with his bare hands. You don't understand the risks involved. One moment of panic, one spike of fear or anger, and Kael's abilities could tear a hole in space-time itself. Your Majesty, Marcus said, looking down at the young prince, may I try something? Before anyone could object, he knelt down to Prince Kael's level and spoke in the same gentle tone he had used earlier. Kael, I know you're scared about your powers, but being afraid of something doesn't make it go away, just makes it harder to control. The child's form flickered slightly, but he nodded, understanding crossing his alien features. When I was young, Marcus continued, I was afraid of the dark. I thought monsters lived in the shadows. But my grandmother taught me that darkness isn't scary, it's just the absence of light. And we can always make light. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small devicer, basic maintenance light used for detailed engineering work. When he activated it, it cast a warm, steady glow that seemed to fascinate Prince Kael. Your powers aren't monsters in the dark, Marcus said softly. They're light. And you don't have to be afraid of making light. Something extraordinary happened then. Prince Kael's unstable form began to solidify, and instead of the chaotic energy bursts, a gentle, controlled radiance began to emanate from him. The light was beautiful, not the harsh glare of artificial illumination, but something that seemed to carry warmth and comfort with it. Impossible, whispered High Counselor Vex, his psychic signature is completely stable. Queen Lysara stared in amazement as her son's abilities manifested, in a way she had never seen before, controlled, purposeful, and incredibly powerful. How? She breathed. He needed to know he wasn't alone. Marcus replied simply. Fear makes everything harder. Trust makes everything possible. Their moment of wonder was shattered by another urgent alarm. This time, the sound was different, not the approach warning, but the harsh klaxon that indicated imminent attack. They're here, Admiral Torres announced, her hand moving to her communicator. All ships to battle stations, through the palace's crystal walls. They could see the dark shapes of the Dracta fleet emerging from hyperspace, hundreds of angular, predatory vessels that looked like they had been designed by nightmares. At their head was a massive dreadnought, easily 3 times the size of the largest human vessel. Queen Lysara rose, power beginning to coalesce around her. All citizens are to take shelter in the deep chambers. All warriors, prepare, for her words were cut off, as Prince Kael suddenly cried out in pain, his small form convulsing as uncontrolled energy began crackling round him. The peaceful light of moments before became harsh and chaotic, and Marcus could sense the child's terror as he felt the aggressive intentions of the approaching enemy fleet. He's picking up their thoughts, Queen Lysara said urgently. Their hatred, their desire for conquest and destruction, it's overwhelming his defenses. The energy bursts from Prince Kael were growing stronger, and Marcus could see cracks beginning to appear in the crystal walls around them. If this continued, the child's uncontrolled abilities would tear the palace apart from the inside. Without hesitation, Marcus wrapped his arms around the frightened prince, pulling him close despite the dangerous energy discharges. Kael, look at me. Look at my eyes, not at what's out there. The child's gaze found his, and Marcus felt the strange sensation of mental contact, the overwhelming pressure he had experienced with Queen Lisa, but something gentler, like a frightened animal seeking comfort. I know you can feel their anger, Marcus said calmly, even as energy crackled dangerously around them. But their feelings don't have to become your feelings. You're not them. You're you. I can't stop it, Prince Kael whispered, his voice carrying harmonics of distress that made the air itself vibrate. Then don't stop it, Marcus replied, an idea forming in his mind. Use it. Feel their anger, their hatred, and then show them something different. Show them what you really are. Queen Lysara started to object, but Marcus was already helping Prince Kael to his feet, guiding him toward the chamber's central platform. Trust me, he said to her. Trust him. The battle had begun outside. Through the palace walls, they could see the flashes of weapons fire as human and leviathan ships engaged the Dracta fleet. The enemy's superior numbers were beginning to tell, and several allied vessels were already showing critical damage. Prince Kael closed his eyes, and slowly, deliberately, he reached out with his mind toward the attacking fleet. Marcus stayed close beside him, one hand on the child's shoulder, offering the steady presence that seemed to help stabilize his abilities. What happened next would be remembered in both human and leviathan history for centuries to come. Instead of the destructive psychic assault that everyone expected, Prince Kael projected something entirely different across the void of space. It was a feeling, an emotion so pure and powerful that it cut through the Dracta's mental shields like light through darkness. He projected love, not the romantic love of adults, but the simple, innocent love of a child, love for his mother, love for his people, love for the strange human who had shown him kindness, and even love for the enemies who sought to destroy them. It was a love without conditions or expectations, the kind that sees beauty in everything and finds hope even in the darkest moments. The effect on the Draktar fleet was immediate and devastating. These were beings who had built their entire civilization on aggression and conquest, who had forgotten that any emotion other than anger and hatred could exist. To suddenly experience pure, unconditional love was like being struck by lightning made of starlight. Ships began to slow, their weapons powering down. Communications channels that had been filled with threats and demands fell silent. Across the entire enemy fleet, Draktar warriors found themselves questioning everything they had believed about strength and weakness, about conquest and surrender. The massive dreadnought that led their fleet came to a complete stop, its weapons systems going dark. Over the communication channels came a voice harsh and alien, but carrying notes of confusion and wonder. What is this feeling? What have you done to us? Queen Lazara stepped forward, her own abilities enhanced and focused by her son's incredible display of power. When she spoke, her voice carried across space to reach every mind in the enemy fleet. "We have shown you what you forgot long ago," she said simply. "We have shown you that there is more to existence than taking and destroying. There is also giving and creating. There is also love." The standoff continued for long minutes, two vastly different philosophies of existence meeting in the space between worlds. Finally, the Draktar fleet leader spoke again. We do not understand. This feeling, it makes us weak, vulnerable. Why do you show us this?" It was Marcus who answered, his voice somehow carrying across the void through Prince Kael's abilities. "Because weakness and vulnerability aren't the opposite of strength. They're part of it. It takes courage to care about someone else more than yourself. It takes strength to protect instead of destroy." One by one, the Draktar vessels began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in confusion and wonder. Their crews struggling to process emotions they had never allowed themselves to feel. The massive fleet that had come to conquer and destroy departed as quietly as they had arrived, leaving behind only questions and the possibility of change. In the throne chamber, Prince Kael collapsed from exhaustion, but he was smiling, the first truly happy expression anyone had seen from him since his powers had begun manifesting. Marcus caught him as he fell, and the child looked up at him with eyes that now held peace instead of fear. "Did we win?" Prince Kael asked weakly. "No," Marcus replied, smoothing the child's strange, starlight hair. "We did something better. We helped them remember who they could be instead of who they were." Queen Lazara knelt beside them, her expression transformed by wonder and newfound respect. "In all our centuries of evolution," she said softly, "we believed that emotions made us weak. But today, a frightened child's love for others proved stronger than the hatred of an entire fleet." She looked at Marcus with eyes that held new understanding. "You were right, human. We had forgotten what it meant to feel, and in doing so, we had forgotten what it meant to truly live." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in diplomatic history. The terraform worlds were secured, but more than that, a new alliance was born, one based not on mutual benefit or strategic advantage, but on genuine understanding and respect. An exchange program was established, with human teachers helping young Velathorans navigate their rediscovered emotional development, while Velathoran masters shared their advanced technologies and wisdom with human students. Marcus found himself appointed as Prince Kael's permanent mentor and the first human ambassador to the Leviathan court. As they prepared to leave the palace for the new embassy being constructed in the capital, Prince Kael pressed something into Marcus's hand, small crystal that pulsed with gentle, warm light. "So you can always find me," the young prince said in English that was becoming more fluent every day. "And so I can always find you when I'm scared." Marcus smiled and closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its warmth spread up his arm and settle in his chest like a small sun. Sometimes, he reflected, looking out at the combined human and Leviathan fleets now working together to patrol the system. The most important moments in history begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Behind them, Queen Lysara watched with ancient eyes that were finally beginning to remember what wonder felt like. In protecting her child, a simple human engineer had taught an entire civilization that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the courage to care. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was smiling at the possibility of what these two very different species might accomplish together. And in the nursery of the new embassy, Prince Kael slept peacefully for the first time since his powers had awakened, dreaming not of chaos and destruction, but of light and love and the endless possibilities that came from being truly, completely unafraid. Asterisk.